Hello, and welcome back to Blue Moon Nursery Part 5, I believe. Last time, the poor little new Smurf got stuck in the tumble dryer or something, I believe, and got really fucked up. So we'll see what happens now. Cool Smurf. Poor little Smurfling. Smurf in hand. By the morning, I'd phoned the nursery, sick with apprehension. To my relief, I learned that the runt had survived, but barely. Another minute trying to breathe that blistering, drier air, and she would have been asphyxiated. The nurses had laboured all night to save the creature's life. X-rays didn't reveal any broken bones, at least. Her skin was so badly seared and bruised in places that even gently touching it caused the baby Smurf to recoil and whimper pitiably. During the next few weeks, the nursery staff and I worked to help the badly injured little runt recover from her traumatic accident. The creature had to either lie on its side or its stomach on a special little bed, because the slightest pressure on its burnt and bruised tail would cause the remarkably sensitive appendage to explode with pain, eliciting an awful yelp from the tiny blue infant. The runt's seared, chapped and bruised skin made changing its diapers an agonizingly painful ordeal for it. A sopping wet and soiled diaper would cause a baby Smurf intolerable discomfort, and before long the wee one would be irritably squeaking for attention. The poor runt, however, learned swiftly to stifle her complaints. The runt's silent suffering merely delayed the inevitable, dreaded diaper change. Sooner or later, the dirty diaper's unmistakably noxious odour would betray her condition to us, undermining the helpless runt's feeble ploy. The snivelling little creature would look pleadingly up into our eyes, beseeching us please not to hurt her yet again. That sorry gaze of hers pained my heart greatly, and I'd often envision it whenever I closed my eyes. We'd always performed the diaper task as gently as we possibly could, but there simply wasn't a baby's wipe in existence soft enough. The undersized Smurfling's scorched, chapped skin, already stinging and inflamed by her baby mess, was appallingly sensitive, and she'd yelp louder and louder with each wipe. Even the extra gentle, formulated baby Smurf powder stung her sore bottom. This once routine, and often even fun when we used it as an excuse to tickle her, procedure now always began with apprehensive whimpering and culminated in miserable howling with rivers of tears. The Smurfling runt's poor little bottom had become frightfully sore and tender. Even very gentle wiping caused tears of pain. And here we have a very, very distressing image of the Smurfling runt, really just fucked up, crying, getting his arse wiped. As with Pom-Pom, the runt's remarkably low pain threshold and frailty reinforced my convictions that these helpless, magical creatures were never meant for the harsh world of humans. Stuck in bed away from her playmates, the wretched creature became morose and frequently shed tears, moaning and blubbering most plaintively. In order to mitigate her ennui? Don't know what that means. I would personally treat her to a Smurf finger puppet show every afternoon in an earnest attempt to cheer the wee Smurfling. My lady friend had previously crafted an assortment of adorable little puppets with which she sometimes entertained the baby Smurfs. I'd bring that puppet box into the exam room, and before the runt's eyes transform my fingers into Smurfs. Baby Smurfs, Smurfettes, and friendly talking animals. The tiny baby creature would watch with great interest and sometimes clap and giggle a little, but those merry outbursts often made her sore ribs and limbs ache terribly, and she'd abruptly cease with a pained wince. There's an image of Smurf in hand using the Smurf finger puppets to cheer up Smurfling runt. The lonesome runt Smurfling appreciated any attention and entertainment we would give her. Sometimes I'd be allowed to bring Blueberry with me into the exam room so that the babies could babble and hold hands. Blueberry always had a very soothing effect on the runt's nerves. My adopted baby Smurf's concern for his little playmates was readily apparent, and he never seemed quite at ease while at the nursery, unless he had a chance to see if the runt was okay. Also, he alone somehow understood never to touch any of the runt's numerous ouchies. We simply couldn't trust the other tiny nursery denizens not to poke at the runt's ugly, sensitive sores and contusions out of curiosity. Not all of our beloved baby Smurf's injuries had been physical. We'd learned from the night nurses that the runt had started to suffer recurring nightmares. They were probably about the accident. Her little limbs would begin twitching as she softly whimpered. The whimpering would grow louder and her limbs spasms more violent until she'd awaken with a choking gasp, followed a couple seconds thereafter by a loud, piercing scream. The outburst would also rouse and set off the startled baby Smurfs sleeping in the adjoining room. Sometimes she'd roll over in her sleep onto her fragile, injured tail. The resulting pain jolting her from her slumber caused the little Smurf to wail and cry to the point of exhaustion, eventually dying down to hoarse sobs. Though I myself never knew exactly what transpired in these terrible nocturnal visions, the reader will be afforded a rare peek into the fragile psyche of this baby Smurf. Whoa! So we just get to see the dream even though this guy never sees it? That's awesome. The runt slides down the smooth surface of a dryer's interior. It's kind of fun, and she wonders if this is some new playground equipment. Suddenly, a heap of damp but clean diapers falls upon the runt and pins her down. A loud metallic clang startles the baby Smurf as the dryer door closes. The alarmed runt tries to cry out, but the mountain of damp cloth muffles her cries. Suddenly, that slick floor starts moving beneath her, and she's lifted up in the darkness. She cries out, flailing her little arms but finding no purchase as she falls, slapped about the face by the tumbling wet diapers. Her cries are cut short as she hits the hard floor with a dull thump, her breath painfully knocked out of her. Over and over, the helpless, confused and terrified Smurfling runt endures the frightening, painful cycle within the pitch-black confines of the running dryer. The metal walls and flying diapers start to warm, and before long are scalding hot, burning every bit of bare blue flesh that touches it. Soon, the organic cotton of her very own romper is charring the skin beneath. The air becomes as scorching as well, and with each tortured breath, her lungs burn until she chokes, no longer able to scream. Over time, dead patches of the runt's burnt skin sloughed off, and were replaced by thin but healthy new light blue skin from beneath. As the pain of each washing and diaper change subsided, the runt's mood became more restless. We began placing the runt alone in the playpen so that it could crawl around without fear of getting her sore spots poked at by the other babies. The weakened creature's gait was still a little wobbly when she had recovered enough to be finally integrated with her fellow Smurflings. It was a day we celebrated with fresh-made Smurfberry pudding for the little ones. All the nursery staff had shown up, and we each took turns carefully squeezing and stroking the recently healed Smurfling runt's sensitive round tail to her immense delight. Unfortunately, the runt's night terrors never abated, and she would wet herself at least twice as frequently as the other Smurflings. Because of the formerly painful experience with diaper changes, the poor runt still feared them, and the miserable little creature would suffer in silence no matter how soggy she became. It became standard policy among the staff to check the runt at least once every hour. In time, however, we could tell if a traumatized Smurfling had been soiled for a while just by the singularly glum expression on its tiny blue face. Blueberry and I went home. I was relieved that the worst of the runt's recovery was over. She'd been in my thoughts every day as she was convalescing in the stark medical exam room. I just hoped that in time, her hurts on the inside would heal as well. But these magical little beings were simply never meant to suffer horrors like this in the first place, and the final prognosis was uncertain. I prayed nothing like this would ever happen to my sweet little Blueberry. I bet it does. Before bedtime, I gave Blueberry a bubble bath. The special liquid soap made my baby Smurf's little body quite slippery, and he squealed and giggled as I tried to hold on to him and wash his ticklish places. He wore a special plastic bath hat, which I plucked off just long enough to wash the smooth crown of his head. I had only a few extra seconds before the tiny creature grew acutely nervous about his bare blue scalp. Bending down, I planted a quick kiss on the top of his little head before replacing the cute little security bath hat. Blueberry closed his eyes, shrugged his thin little shoulders, and emitted a happy giggle in reply. Unbeknownst to Blueberry, I often removed his Smurf hat during his nap time in order to kiss him. Wow, so that was the next chapter of Blue Moon Nursery. It was very haunting. I feel so bad for the runt, the Smurfling runt. It wasn't really. I can't even remember if she climbed in or if this guy just kind of put her in. I think she climbed in, probably. But yeah, very sad story. But things are looking up, you know. The runt's okay now, pretty much. She still has nightmares and stuff, but I mean the physical injuries are cured, and you know, Smurf in hand is having fun with Blueberry, and I'm sure nothing as bad as that will ever happen to Blueberry in the Smurf torture story. Let's see what people have to say. Ravenchild. Yay! She lives! Smiling Papa Smurf emoji. Shows how tough she really is, though. Never underestimate the little ones. Vega. Poor little thing. I can't even imagine the fear she felt while she was locked in that dryer. Good to know she's okay. I wish her all the best. Smiling Papa Smurf emoji. Squeaky Smurf! Oh my! I see the worst of all was already overcome, but all her trauma might delay some time to be over. What? I hope she'll smile again. Keep on always smurfing. Cool Smurf. I'm so happy she made it. Squeaky Smurf. He's replying to Smurf in Hand's saying he hasn't decided for a name for the runt. For now, Smurf in Hand, I thought of Rosebud and Teeny Weeny for the new baby Smurf. Teeny Weeny is shit. Rosebud's alright, I guess. Ravenchild. Smurf in Hand, if you're still thinking about a name for the runt, how about Preemie Phoenix? What? Being she just survived a hot dryer tumble ride? Phoenix, sure. What does Preemie mean? I don't know. I don't like it. Smurf in Hand. Dear Squeaky and Ravenchild, thank you both for submitting those names. I like them better than anything I've yet to come up with. However, I'm still undecided about which one I'll pick. I'll probably just as frequently refer to her as the Runt as to her proper name in future stories, though. I'm currently working on the next chapter, and it will require a lot of time to complete as I'm envisioning it. I don't want to give too much away, but toward the end I'm going to introduce the secretive group of humans and Smurfs dedicated to rescuing Smurfs in distress by any means necessary. That sounds sick! Once again, thanks to Ravenchild for providing the original idea and picture. The picture was sick. The picture was so cool. No props, Smurf in Hand. Oh, this is Ravenchild. Can't wait to read your next chapter when it's done. Big grin. WTF. Gargamel! This guy's not commented before. You people are crazy! The story about the Smurf thing has obvious holy shit. Obvious and highly disturbing sexual overtones. This first fucking Gargamel, dude. I fear for your sanity, all of you. But in the meantime, here's a picture. Take more than a cotton bud on the end of a finger to put this right. He's put a picture of a load of baby Smurfs like in hell or something, crying and screaming. This guy's the first guy to understand. Wow. Wow. Ravenchild. I wonder how they're going to reply to this. Ravenchild. What the fuck? Oh no, his name's WTF. WTF, everyone here has a right to post their creative efforts. This is Smurf in Hand's universe fanfic, and his art is rather cute in my opinion. Your image has nothing to do with this story, and your comment is very inappropriate. Therefore, my advice to you is if you can't say anything positive, or at least have constructive advised criticism, then don't say anything at all. Vic George 2010. I personally enjoy the pics. Pics of like dying baby naked Smurfs. I'm glad the bruised up baby Smurf is doing quite well now. Kajinka Sketchette. Replying to WTF. Hello, troll. Smurf in hand. To the troll. Holy shit. What a bizarre interpretation of my work. You'd best cease fretting over our sanity and start worrying about your own. For your own sake and for that of society at large, please seek psychiatric treatment for yourself post-haste. Bro, you're literally the one writing like Smurf torture porn and drawing naked baby Smurfs. Like, do these people just do they really think this is so innocent? I don't know. To any moderator, well, I realise that my creating the story thread here is a privilege, for which I am very grateful, and not a right. I hope that I'm not out of line if I humbly request that this troll's comments, as well as this one post of mine, be removed and any future post by the troll subsequently blocked from this thread, as it disrupts the ongoing story's mood. Squeaky Smurf. My goodness! Sexual overtones, you say? Oh, please, Mr. What the Fuck, give us a break. There's an old Brazilian expression. Procura chifre un cabeça de cavalo. To look for horns on a horse's head. Which fits you perfectly, because that's what you've just done. Smurfette 18. Can't wait for the next chapter of this story. I'm new to this site and I love it already. Smurf in hand. Glad to hear it, Smurfette 18. Unfortunately, it will be a rather long wait. By necessity, the upcoming chapter is quite a bit longer than previous ones and will require plenty of illustrations to accompany it. While I've finished most of the text and even started on a sequel, I've yet only 2 images completed. Hopefully I'll be at least halfway done by next weekend. This chapter will be fraught with danger and tribulations. Ravenchild's idea of a clandestine rescue team will be introduced towards the end. In the sequel, this team will again be featured, as always, through the eyes of my human protagonist, the adoptive father of Blueberry. The only real hope of salvation for a couple of the Blue Moon Nursery's missing Smurflings will lie with this team. Swarlock. In reply to WTF. I wish you hadn't put that picture in there. That's more disturbing than you think, and not funny at all. I don't think it's really any more disturbing than the images already featured in this story. Personally. Squeaky Smurf. What the fuck? What the fuck? Smurf in hand. Since your specialty is writing Smurf fanfics featuring Smurf babies, and I've already commented with you about adopting a baby Smurf, I'd like you to be the first to know. Today, besides Christmas Eve, became even more special to me. We arrived! I got not 1 but 2 baby Smurfs. They've arrived here just today. Later I'll post a photo of them. That's crazy. It's got a picture of the baby Smurfs. And it says we have arrived, and there's a, I don't know what that background is, like an abstract image. Squeaky Smurf again. I'm still a bit surprised for they have coming just today. For they having come just today. What's that emoji? I don't know. Loved up, lovey-dovey Smurf emoji. Sassette. Squeaky, congratulations to you. Your little babies are adorable, and they picked a special day to arrive. Wow, they did arrive on Christmas Eve. Wow. Awesome. Have you named them? Perhaps Teeny Weeny and Rosebud? Wink. Those are the names he suggested for Runt. Runt. Trustworthy Smurfette. On Christmas Day 2008 at 10:34 AM. Merry Christmas and Happy Hanukkah, everyone! Squeaky Smurf. Many thanks, Sassette. Many thanks, Sassette. I only don't know whether I'll put the same names I suggested for Smurf in Hand's characters, but as one of them is dressed in pink, who knows? Thanks again, big grin. And Trustworthy Smurfette, a very wonderful season for you too. Archive Smurf. To WTF. WTF, you are discriminating the Smurfs! Devil Smurf emoji. How dare you be mean to Smurf in Hand's story? You made us very sad, mad, and disappointed. To Smurf in Hand, I'm sorry I didn't start reading your story before. I just started to read it today, and I passed about 1 page or less out of the whole topic. The story is turning out awesome, and I've got more to read. So I'll read this at some points, approximately 1 or 2 days, to figure out so I can look forward to the most recent parts. P.S. That troll posting that extremely disturbing picture was being very mean. I am sorry, I didn't go through this before because I never started reading this back then. You did the right thing. Overall, I am proud of your artwork. You are talented, and I kind of feel guilty for not reading this earlier. Well, you WTF, get out of here! We don't allow violence. Keep up the good work, Smurf in Hand. Just reading the comments, sorry guys. Like the chat box. Alright, next page. This is crazy, like, like why? I don't understand. Like Smurf in Hand's images are just genuinely way more traumatizing than that. That looks like it's come from an actual Smurf comic or something. I don't know. I don't know if that ever happened in like the Smurf comics or if there even is Smurf comics. But it looked like an actual panel from like a Smurf comic, and these guys just didn't understand. And I don't get why. Like, he has a valid point, right? There's a reason this story is like infamous today, because it's fucked up. like I don't know, man. Space Harrier Brainy. I mean, I guess the guy that was saying, I just thought he had a different name. Space Harrier Brainy, don't ever feel guilty about not reading my story previously. There is only so much any of us can purview in our sparse free time, and to be quite honest, I'm not much of an online story reader myself. I am pleased though to know that you're enjoying the story thus far. The entertainment of others is my aim. I will not always succeed in this, but hopefully I'll gradually build a rapport with my readers that will allow me to improve. Thank you for your kind words. Squeaky, I love your 2 new adopted baby Smurfs. So yeah, this chapter came out Boxing Day 2008. Let's go. I was spending yet another happy afternoon playing with and helping to care for the baby Smurfs at the Blue Moon Nursery. Sitting down on the carpeted floor, I produced a book as a couple of the curious infants approached, one crawling and the other scooting along on its rump, squeaking for me to pick them up. They were Pom Pom and Strawberry. A baby Smurf possessed 2 common methods of locomotion. It could crawl on all 4s, or it could sit upright and scoot itself along for short distances. Strawberry, in particular, preferred scooting about the playroom floor on her little rear end. Who wants to hear a story? I asked in a friendly sing-song voice. The 2 tiny blue infants waved their tiny arms and piped up, squeaking eagerly. Strawberry and Pom Pom loved to sit huddled together in my lap and gaze attentively up at me, their soft, warm blue tails quivering with joy as I read to them from a baby storybook. The simple little creatures probably barely understood most of what I read, but the colourful pictures and the rhythm of my voice as I spoke softly to them in motherese alone was sufficient to soothe and delight the wee critters. I'd even given the 2 sweet little Smurflings their own miniature organic cloth pretend books with non-toxic dye so that they could read along with me. Sometimes I'd see the little dears holding those wordless playbooks and squeaking in cute intonations as if they were actually reading them in their best imitation of me. Here we have a picture of them reading. Baby Pom Pom and Strawberry often liked to play pretend they could read like me. The colourful, washable little wordless books I had given them became the 2 wee Smurflings' most prized possessions, and they would even sleep with them rather than a stuffed toy. Wow. When I prepared to leave for home, I cuddled each of the soft, warm, tiny blue babes for a goodly amount of time, giving Strawberry's responsive tail a series of gentle, tickling flicks. I gave Pom Pom's tail a squeeze as well. The bulbous, fluids-filled sac beneath his posterior skin had eventually been filled with a synthetic gelatin, providing the delightfully soft and squishy consistency of a genuine Smurf's tail. Though the pleasurable sensation of a true Smurf's tail would always be absent, Pom Pom still appreciated the affection on an emotional level. To him at least, he had some sort of a tail for his cradle mates to grasp onto and kind humans to stroke. That reminds me of it's when I learned female orgasms are stronger than male orgasms. It's made me sad, but it would always be absent. For pleasurable sensation. Anyway, tucking them snugly into their cradle, I fluffed their adorable non-allergenic pillows for them to rest their weary heads. I promised to visit them first thing tomorrow morning. Luckily, I'd been able to schedule another volunteer visit for early the next day, since it was a weekend, and the two baby Smurfs and I would have another wonderful day. Or so I had thought. Bum bum bum. All took it out after a busy day. There's Pom Pom and Strawberry sleeping together. Not together, but next to each other in bed. So why is tomorrow not going to be another wonderful day? Let's find out. It was early morning after the one and only night that our security guard couldn't make it due to mysterious car troubles. Oh, fuck. Blueberry had fallen asleep in my coat pocket during the hour-long drive. I pulled into my parking place and pushed the intercom button outside the front door to identify myself and be buzzed inside. There was no answer, so I tried again and again. I thought perhaps the nurse was in the powder room, so I patiently waited a few minutes before repeating. Still no answer, and now I was worried. Without the guard, the nurse had spent the night alone in the nursery with the baby Smurfs. Since I was only a volunteer, even though a very trusted one, I still couldn't be issued a key. I thought about calling one of the other nurses, or my lady friend who lived in town to let me in and investigate. But before I could dial a number, I saw a car roll into the parking lot. It was the stern weekend day nurse reporting for her shift. I told her there had been no answer, and she let us both in with her key. The nursery was eerily silent as we split off to locate the night nurse. I repeatedly called out for the nurse by name as I walked down the main corridor, and was answered by a thump and a cry of my name from within the broom closet.
Get me out of here! The babies are in danger!
I unlocked the closet and the night nurse burst out, running down the hall in a frenzy and into the Smurf's playroom. I followed her closely behind with growing alarm, mindful of my adopted baby Smurf still nestled in my pocket. He was now awake, and I could feel him shifting about and stretching with a baby Smurf yawn that was a little more than a soft, tiny peep. We located all but two of the little baby Smurfs cowering in nooks about the nursery playroom. The poor incontinent runt had wet herself hours ago, and most of the other poor little blue infants were terribly overdue for a diaper change. We couldn't, however, locate Strawberry or Pom Pom. And after an hour of searching the nursery, we came to the chilling conclusion that they'd been Smurf-napped by whoever had shoved the night nurse from behind and locked her in the closet while putting something away. The nurse had heard the wee ones' panicked cries, unable to come to their aid. The police were phoned, and within half an hour, the nurses and I had made our statements in turn in the front office, all while trying to calm and clean the traumatized baby Smurfs as these new strangers investigated the nursery, particularly the closet and playroom. Blueberry was especially sensitive, and picking up on the mood of the other Smurflings and noting the absence of Strawberry and Pom Pom, started whining anxiously. Over the next 3 days, the mood was very tense at the nursery, and humans and Smurfs alike were affected. The poor little Smurfling runt started crying day and night from tummy cramps, and after checking and rechecking her diaper throughout the day, it was surmised that the creature's insides weren't moving. What? One of the nurses handed me a little bowl of Smurfberry pudding with something added to help the wee one get back to normal. Unfortunately, the Smurfberry's flavour could not entirely mask the disagreeable taste of the special additive. Anything that didn't taste like those sweet berries from the Smurf's fabled shrubs was simply unpalatable to the fussy little creature's hypersensitive taste buds. I had the unpleasant but necessary task of force-feeding the tiny blue infant this special concoction several times a day. The little thing frequently gagged and almost choked as I tried to get it down its tiny throat without any spit-ups. The baby Smurf would kick and squirm in her high chair as I held her tiny mouth shut until she had no choice but to swallow. I'd have to cuddle the wee babe and stroke its tail for quite a while in order to calm it after each feeding. The poor, confused little thing couldn't understand why I was forcing her to eat that yucky stuff, and she soon stopped whining whenever she was hungry. No matter how badly the hunger pains gnawed at her little tummy, she dreaded eating more of that pudding. Around regularly scheduled meal times, when all the nursery's Smurf babies were fed, regardless of appetite, the teensy runts would try to crawl off and hide from the caretakers and me. The slow, clumsy, naive Smurfling's pathetic efforts to elude us were to no avail, and we'd always find her within minutes, cowering and peeking out from between her tiny blue fingers. This was not a game of peekaboo either of us anticipated with joy. Here we have an image. Oh, an image of Runt crying, being force-fed that shit. No, that's for our own good. But like, this story is weird, right? This story is weird. I feel like most people's Smurf fanfics would be, you know, happy. like I don't know, if you love Smurfs, like if I wrote a Sonic fanfic, I wouldn't just be talking about like, you know, Sonic getting divorced. Actually, that sounds pretty good. But like Sonic getting divorced, suicidal, depressed, like sitting around eating chili dogs, crying. Like if I would not be, like that, I guess that would be my fanfic, but it wouldn't be most people's fanfics, is what I'm trying to say. Like, this is strange. I think this is bizarre. And I don't get why no one sees it. Except WTF. On the fourth day, the night nurse and myself were called into the police station for a follow-up in the investigation. Since there didn't yet exist any statutes clearly defining a Smurf's sentience or rights, the police had to treat the matter mainly as a case of burglary and animal theft. If ever caught, the perpetrator would get more jail time for simply locking the nurse in the closet than for any atrocities committed against our beloved Smurflings. Earlier this morning, our cyber specialist located these video clips hosted on a server somewhere outside the country. It had been accessed already several hundred times before he was able to hack the site and take it down. While the server may not be a local, we have reason to believe that the video clip itself was shot and uploaded not more than a 2 to 3 hours drive from your nursery. Oh, that was a quote from the policeman, okay. The nurse and I sat in silent apprehension.
I have to warn you, the subject matter is very disturbing, but we need at least one of you to identify the victims in order to proceed with the investigation.
Oh no. This is going to be like a snuff Smurf video of Pom Pom and Strawberry? Oh my god. There were Pom Pom and Strawberry. Wait, I skipped a bit. The detective opened a file on the computer desktop, and the movie snippet filled the screen and began to play. I watched the clip in horror. Nothing could have prepared me for what we were about to witness. There were Pom Pom and Strawberry. Pom Pom's darling little hat with its fluffy blue pom pom sewed on it was unmistakable. The terrified little blue infants each were hog-tied and dangling in midair, crying their little hearts out. Strawberry's adorable little pink PJs with the words Little Miracle printed on them were torn off and lay on a rough-looking workbench below. Occasionally, we'd hear a man's coarse laughter between our beloved Smurfling's tortured sobs. Seeing from the video how much the two baby Smurfs' diapers sagged told me that they'd been unpleasantly sodden and soiled for a very long time, perhaps for a day or even longer. Poor little Pom Pom flushed miserably as his ersatz tail was ridiculed. The cruel man jabbed at it with his finger.
What's with your misshapen tail, you deformed little blue freak?
The masked captor sneered in a digitally disguised voice. Then, The helpless Smurfling's soft, tender, bulbous little blue noses and tails, which they so loved to have caressed at the nursery, were each viciously pinched, jerked, and twisted repeatedly. A Smurf's nose was tender enough, but there was nothing so sensitive as a Smurf's bulbous tail. I blanched at those tied Smurflings' sharp, frenetic screeches of pain. They were like nothing I'd ever heard before, and I would rather have gone permanently deaf than to hear those poor, suffering, tiny blue infant creatures' shrill outbursts of unmitigated agony. Oh no! Here we have an image of suspiciously Smurf-in-hand-looking hands. No, it's not Smurf-in-hand. Obviously it's not Smurf-in-hand. This is the evil, digitally disguised man. And he's torturing these poor Smurfs here. In the next scene they howled, as each was taken in turn by their floppy round Smurf ears, which were also given a series of merciless wrenches and twists. Here we see that very thing happening. Poor little baby Pom-Pom crying as his ears are stretched. Those baby Smurf's soft round ears were roughly twisted and wrenched out of shape. The delicate things soon exhibited severe bruising and swelling. I was dumbfounded by these dark scenes of wanton cruelty. Why anyone would be amused by the cute little baby creature's sufferings was beyond my comprehension. Strawberry was then untied and allowed to fall. The diapered Smurfling's posterior hit the workbench with an audible, wet and squishy sounding plop. The diaper was yanked off as the tiny blue infant was pinned face down on the workbench, with the workbench's nicked and greasy surface. The man's other hand came back into view, brandishing what appeared to be a short section of flexible plastic track for toy cars. What? As Pom-Pom dangled above, he stopped crying and gaped in abject disbelief. Oh! The Strawberry was slapped repeatedly on the rear with the length of track. The Lilliputian infant's face contorted and went purple as he yelled with each sharp resounding smack. The shocked, soggy and sobbing Pom-Pom was untied and dealt with next. The poor Smurfling thrashed and screamed wildly as it was spanked. When it was over, the two stunned and exhausted little creatures lay face down, sobbing breathlessly. Their tender, plump little blue bottoms were covered in reddish welts. This is horrible, man. Oh! Oh, God. Oh, no. So sad. So sad. But, like, this guy only draws images. Sometimes he draws nice images, but he loves drawing images of them, like, crying naked and shit. It's true. Like, it's true. Neither of the tiny blue creatures had been remotely treated like this before, and they couldn't believe this was really happening to them. Strawberry especially had never experienced any real pain in all her sweet young life, nor had any human ever abused her, and the shock of this nightmarish cruelty, after being so mollycoddled at the Blue Moon Nursery, threatened to destroy her fragile psyche. Oh man, Strawberry's out here having a mental breakdown. From off camera, the tormentor's raucous laughter eclipsed Strawberry and Pom-Pom's plaintive mewling. In a later part of the clip, I mean, you've already identified them, dude. You don't have to keep watching, to be honest. In a later part of the clip, Pom-Pom had been grabbed and was being dunked headfirst into a pan of water. He was held halfway under as he writhed wildly. I could see his legs kicking frantically in the air, and his bruised and swollen Smurf tails panicked, quivering. The diminutive baby creature was powerless in its torturous grasp, and was mercilessly immersed for intolerably long periods of time. Upon the brink of drowning, the suffering little infant would be brought up only long enough to have any water squeezed from its aching little lungs, to take a couple desperate gasps of air before being shoved back underwater. Yeah, we're gonna see that.
Oh.
Baby Smurfs were terrified to have their heads underwater. This fear of suffocation in deep water was the reason we only bathed them in basins of very shallow distilled water. Here we have the poor little baby Pom Pom, crying, drenched in water, coughing up gallons of water. I simply had to. Oh god. I saw the words hot pepper sauce coming up. No, don't dunk him in the hot pepper sauce. No. I simply had to turn away from another awful sight of a final clip, but not before I saw. Not before I saw someone's hands unscrew a bottle of hot pepper sauce and deliberately rub it into helpless Strawberry's delicate, moist little eyes using a cotton swab. I was the same type of swab we would use to gently clean the baby Smurf's big, soft, floppy ears during their bath time. Piercing shrieks exploded through my computer speakers and froze my blood. Periodically, these terrible scenes were brightly illuminated by the brief flicker of what must have been a camera's flash. These guys are just out here making fucking Smurf torture porn, bro. These evil pieces of shit. Fuck. This is fucking Smurf CP, bro. Which is what Smurf in Hand is also making. He is writing this story. He is drawing these images, lest we forget. No! Oh no! You can barely read that. No hat or hat askew picture of chili pepper on bottle. Oh, that was like a note for himself he meant to remove and forgot because you can barely see it. Dante's fucking chili pepper, bro. Sauce. Strawberry's frantic writhing and shrieking was unbearable to witness as the poor blinded little baby Smurf's eyes burned from the red pepper sauce. What sort of depraved beast would do something like this to an innocent, lovable little baby Smurf? I found the very idea of deriving amusement from intentionally hurting such a precious magical being inconceivable. The reminder that some of us humans possess such a capacity for wanton cruelty made me positively ill with shame and revulsion. I heard a sniffle beside me. Instinctively I took out my handkerchief and without looking placed it into the nurse's hands. The lady had only to blot away a single tear before regaining her composure. "We'll find them," I tried to reassure her. "We'll get our babies home." I wished I believed it myself. I didn't look forward to bedtime that night. I stayed up into the small hours of the night until I was exhausted enough to fall asleep immediately. Those images of Strawberry and Pom Pom, they would haunt me restlessly, relentlessly whenever I lay awake in the dark. Continued in next post due to image count posting restraints. As it would turn out, the next night I would be visited by a member of SMURF Hardliners, a small secretive group of Smurfs and humans who in the past had made headlines with their more proactive methods of protecting Smurfs' rights. Though I didn't exactly have a direct line to their cell, I had left an urgent message for Tess Lorette. The Smurfette had no official ties to Smurf's more radical arm, but the message was somehow passed along and they had learned of our dilemma. Presently, I heard a soft tapping on my bedroom window, and looking out, I saw a Smurf. I was positive that he was the adult Smurf who might aided an escape from the municipal shelter. Remember that? I leaped up and opened the window to let him climb in. Instead of a traditional white pants and hat, he wore an urban camouflage knit bodysuit and hat. Slung across his back was a canister of pepper spray with a special trigger to fit a Smurf's hands. No doubt this was used to repel cats and terriers, and probably people too. Damn badass. The adult Smurf's concrete textured bodysuit rendered him practically invisible in the streets to human eyes. Felines, however, could still clearly detect the tiny blue humanoids. His modified canister of mace would be ample protection though, if the Smurf should be attacked.
I want to thank you for smurfing me that paperclip,
he said in his tiny voice. I wish I could have done more for you, I replied ruefully.
We know about your SMURF babies. We also have the possible location of SMURF within a very small radius. We'll try making a move tonight, but before I could go, I could use your phone.
Of course. I hurriedly grabbed the cordless phone and set it down beside him. Blueberry was snoring away amidst this whole interchange. I don't know what the Smurf said, but within minutes the car pulled up in my driveway. The Smurf waved goodbye and hopped out the window. Moments later, the car, himself, and his no doubt human accomplice were gone. I closed and locked the window and lay on my side, gazing at Blueberry in his tiny cradle. I wouldn't sleep tonight. Fuck. That chapter, man. That chapter was that was crazy. That was crazy. Poor Strawberry and Pom Pom. Raven Child. Wow, awesome. Can't wait for the next chapter. Doing really great with these illustrations too. Squeaky Smurf.
Your story is getting more and more thrilling, Smurf in hand. Poor little Smurf babies in the hands of a human monster. All of your pictures leave nothing to be desired too. Very amazing, very amazing, very amazing. The GIF effects you gave for 2 sleeping babies and the urban gorilla Smurf.
Urban gorilla Smurf. He is. Oh, great. Smurf in hand. Thanks for the comments. I have a technical question though. Do some of my images look either elongated or squat? Especially the last one with Strawberry laying down. Does she look too long and skinny in the body? After my last computer crash, I noticed that my paint programs cannot make a perfect square. Raven Child. Your images seem to be alright with me. I know about these computer problems. I myself need a computer guy over here to fix up my good computer, because I'm tired of having to use this slow system to do my artworks on. Bleh. Keep up the great work though. Your art is indeed getting better with the more you do. Wink. Vega. Wow, I'm really impressed by that chapter. Very thrilling. I can't even imagine the fear of those 2 baby Smurfs. I wonder if their psyche will be put together after all this. Great chapter, I'm waiting for more. P.S. Your pics look okay. I can't see anything wrong with them. Ruffette.
Wow, the baby Smurf is so cute.
Whoa! Squeaky Smurf.
As I told before, here's a photo of my baby Smurfs, surrounded with my Smurf collection.
There's a,
Pity it got unfocused. I must have calculated it very badly. Before I forget, Smurf in hand, I think your pictures look very proportional.
And here's a picture of like a circle of Smurf toys surrounding the baby Smurfs. Teeny Weeny and Rosebud, perhaps. Smurf at heart. That is so cute. You're really talented. Is that in response to the story of that picture? Because the story wasn't cute. Smurf in hand says it was about his story. Thank you, Smurf at heart. Alright, next bit. As I lay awake that night, awaiting news from the Smurf militants, my thoughts drifted back to those video clips I'd seen of Pom Pom and Strawberry imprisoned and abused by that pitiless ogre. I wondered where I could find and download it for my own viewing. Just kidding. I made that line up. Simply the idea of that disgusting fiend rudely disrobing our precious baby Smurfs and sullying their naked little bodies with his rough little hands made me seethe. In the video clips, I'd been able to see the revulsion and discomfort reflected in the eyes of the man's tiny blue captives. The Smurflings would visibly shrink away from the wicked human's violating leers and flinch at the touch of his coarse fingers on their delicate bare cerulean flesh. Baby Smurfs by nature were innocent beings and not typically body conscious around their peers or familiar, kindly stewards, be they Smurf or human. My own baby, Blueberry, in fact, often romped and rolled about, squealing with unabashed delight, sky-clad save for his little Smurf cap, whilst I cradled him in my hands or lap. We at the nursery always treated our beloved little charges' bare bodies, especially their private places, with the most utmost reverence. Bath time in particular was a magical time for caretaker and cherished Smurfling alike. with much squeaking and giggling as we caringly scrubbed the little one's soft skin with extra soft and sterile disposable little sponges. What is this? Oh, God. The reprobate Smurf Napper promptly got down to business with the terrorized little beings. Firmly grasped in his captor's hand, Pom-Pom cried in alarmed bewilderment as he was forced to watch Strawberry, his beloved nursery mate, let forth blood-curdling squeals as her sensitive bulbous Smurf tail was brutally crushed until it nearly burst. The vile human beast seemed to particularly enjoy hurting the wee Smurfling's most sensitive appendages, their tender noses and soft, squishy tails. To so viciously abuse a baby Smurf's tail is perhaps the most painful and emotionally destructive act one could inflict, as the wee infant's tail is intertwined with its most basic feelings. It's meant as a special means to soothe and comfort when gently squeezed or stroked, and this affection is just as vital to the tiny blue babe's well-being as their specialized Smurfberry diet. And here we have poor Pom-Pom being held in hand as he has to watch Strawberry's tail being squeezed by some kind of thing. The Smurf activists had eventually pinpointed the IP address signatures left by the Smurf Napper's transmissions to a cul-de-sac where a run-down abandoned house lay. They accurately surmised that this was a likely place to hide the captives, and picking the front door lock they entered stealthily. Searching the house, they found no trace of the man who'd taken the Smurflings, but when they broke down the double-bolted door to the basement, their luck changed. When the Smurfs' rights gorillas finally found our two missing Smurflings in that dark basement, they were greeted by a most horrific sight. The wee babes were stripped naked on a greasy, splinter-ridden workbench in the cold, damp air. Their cute little pajamas and hats were nowhere to be found. Pom-Pom's ribcage was crushed between the jaws of a pipe wrench as he strained for breath, while Strawberry had coiled herself into a little ball nearby, but facing away from her nursery mate. Both the creatures' magical little hearts were glowing, but this phenomenon was much different than the joyous one I'd once witnessed when Blueberry miraculously healed Dewdrop. Rather than the healthy golden light, a sickly greenish aura had materialized around the baby Smurf hearts. Lastly, a thin, jagged vertical fissure had split each heart down the middle. They got broken green hearts, ma'am. Had Pom-Pom remained pinned betwixt the brutal jaws of that pipe wrench for a few more hours, the poor baby Smurf's arms would have become too tired to lift its tightly constricted, tiny lungs would surely have given out. Pom-Pom's toes were bruised from the weight of the hard metal wrench sitting on them. His little knees were swollen and ached at the slightest flexing, causing him to burst into tears each time the rescuers attempted to loosen them up. His spindly legs were painfully cramped, and several days passed before the brutalized blue babe would even crawl again. Perhaps worst of all was the state of his prosthetic tail. While mashed in the jagged metal teeth of the wrench, the little gelatin-filled sac which gave Pom-Pom's tail its shape had ruptured and the gel leaked out. The poor Smurfling was left with a flattened and shriveled length of blue flesh that flopped limply about like a deflated balloon. The destruction yet again of this little creature's prized appendage had a devastating effect upon his psyche, and I knew that we would need to have the prosthesis beneath his skin surgically replaced as soon as his other injuries healed. Those last few hours before their rescue had played like a dark, eternal nightmare for the two blue waifs, where time slowed to a snail's pace. Strawberry had gaped and whined in horror as she was forced to behold the harrowing spectacle of the cruel man clamping Pom-Pom's soft little naked body in the toothed metal jaws of a pipe wrench. The fiend forcibly folded Pom-Pom's little legs up so that his knees pressed into his chest and screwed the wrench closed until the baby Smurf's ribcage was nearly crushed. Each merciless turn of the wrench's screw forced a sharp, agonized squeak from the pinioned baby Smurf's lips. Pom-Pom now had to lift his scrawny blue arms, each time to draw a short, tortured breath. With an ugly chortle, the man remarked that he'd return later, positioned an activated web camera on a tripod aimed at Pom Pom and Strawberry, and then left the basement. Piece of shit. Strawberry tried frantically, but hadn't the strength to loosen the pipe wrench, nor did the tiny creature know quite how anyway. Unable to help Pom Pom, the little Smurfling gave up in tears. There was no way for her to climb down from the workbench either, and a sheer drop to the cement floor below would have splintered most of her delicate Smurf bones. Trapped on the workbench with the horrid sounds of Pom Pom's agonized rasping breath and the sight of his contorted, sweaty, tear-streaked little face was just too much for Strawberry. The distraught, terrified, naked baby Smurf eventually gave up. She curled herself into the trembling little Smurf ball position the distressed baby Smurfs instinctively assumed, and began kneeing at a heart-rending pitch. Keening, sorry. At that moment, both their tiny hearts were shattered, and though the simple creatures could not grasp the concept of death, they sensed they were nearing a dark place from which they would never return. It wasn't until 5 hours later that the liberators discovered them. This is horrible. It's actually horrible. When the Smurfs' rights guerrillas finally located our two missing Smurflings, they were confronted by a most horrific sight. Only during the most dire sufferings and distress of the greatest of joys would a baby Smurf's tiny, precious, magical heart possibly glow, visually manifesting the elfin blue infant's feelings. These little hearts had been broken. Man, it's like 2 chapters ago they were reading books, smiling and shit. One of the human activists was so enraged by the brutality he'd witnessed that he wanted to plant a surprise. He should, dude. Triggered by a thin wire midway down the stairs for when the Smurf Napper returned home. Cooler heads prevailed, and they instead called in the location of the house via 911 before slipping away. Within the half hour, the cul-de-sac was ablaze with the flashes of red and blue police lights. Unbeknownst to the activists, and only later discovered by the police, was the warning system the Smurf Napper had installed. At several locations in the dark house, there had been hidden tiny microphones linked to a laptop computer in the attic. In absentia, the wily Smurf Napper had been able to monitor whatever input came into that laptop over the internet. Thus, forewarned, the man would never return to the house now, and had a booby trap been left for him, it would have instead triggered against the first innocent person to descend those stairs. Police were unable to find any fingerprints, any clues on the old laptop, or pin down where it was transmitting. The house had been abandoned for some time, and none of the neighbours had witnessed anything unusual. The Smurf Napper might as well have been a ghost. Even if this had been a crime involving a human victim, all the investigative effort and legal power in the world would have been futile in finding this cunning fiend. As it was, this was merely the case, albeit an extreme one, of animal cruelty. The resources allotted to such an investigation would be paltry. As for the Smurf hardliners, the later realization that they'd been outsmarted, despite the successful rescue, was a blow to their morale. Some of them had even theorized that the Smurf Napper might have deliberately left an internet trail for them to follow, and set the whole awful scene up for them to find. Before dawn, I was called at home, and instructed by a Smurfette's voice to drive to the nursery immediately. When I reached the parking lot, I was at last confronted by the cell of the Smurf hardliners. They were an intimidating lot. The group consisted of several salty-looking men, women, and Smurfs. In addition to the 4 humans, there was 1 Smurfette and 3 adult male Smurfs, including the one I'd helped rescue from the municipal shelter. I was overwhelmed with relief at what they had brought, and Blueberry popped his head out of my jacket pocket and squeaked excitedly, waving his spindly blue arms. I dearly hoped that one day I'd again see cheerful smiles upon Pom Pom and Strawberry's soft, tiny blue faces. Here we have a picture of the Smurf hardliners holding the poor, crying little Pom Pom and Strawberry. Pom Pom and Strawberry were clothed in spare, generic, organic cotton pajamas, and had been freshly cleaned, diapers, and fed with vitamin and electrolyte-enriched instant Smurfberry juice and dinky little Smurfberry energy bars. A special unguent, don't know what that means, made by the matriarchs or patriarchs of Smurf villages, had been spread on the baby Smurfs, many cuts and contusions. A more liberal amount of the Smurf's antimicrobial healing salve also had been applied to Pom Pom and Strawberry's entire diaper areas, for their bestial captor had forced them to endure nearly 2 days of wearing the same wet-filled diapers. Diaper rash was endemic with baby Smurfs, whose caretakers did not heed the rule of keeping their charges' wee plump little blue bottoms dry. Any longer than a few hours in an unchanged diaper ran the risk of a Smurfling's vulnerable skin contracting such a rash. This particular region of poor Strawberry and Pom Pom's flesh was now so raw and irritated it would be nearly a week before it healed. Once the painful welts from spankings had subsided, both Strawberry and Pom Pom would be scooting on their rumps around the nursery's playroom's hypoallergenic carpet, more as a way to scratch their itchy rears than of going anywhere in particular. Squeaking most irritably and occasionally pitching fits from the frustration of this relentless discomfort. Sad image here of Strawberry and Pom Pom crying yet again. The Smurf napper had callously kept poor Strawberry and Pom Pom in wet soiled diapers for 2 days. Consequently, the exceptionally tender-skinned elfin babies contracted the worst case of diaper rash our nurses had ever seen. For nearly a week hence, the tiny Smurfs would drag their diapered fannies around the nursery floor, in desperation as they tried to relieve the miserable, relentless itching. The tortured little creature's incessant, irritable squeaks for us to make the itching go away often escalated into fits of tearful frustration. As a balm to their little blue souls, the wee magical infants had also each been furnished with cuddly plush emergency comfort dolls bearing the reassuring likeness of an adult Smurf. The dolls' tails were even fitted with gelatin that emulated the squashy feel of a real tail and were proportionally larger. The exaggerated tail size, a symbol of soothing pleasure to a baby Smurf, could be more easily grasped by the wee blue infant's maladroit, chubby little fingers. A distressed baby Smurf could squeeze the doll's tail to bring some relief to his own anxiety. It was a vicarious experience for the little Smurfling, as if in comforting the doll, its own responsive tail was being gently squeezed. The hardliner's sensitivity to the delicate elfin infant's basic physical and emotional needs, and their imaginative stopgap measures to meet them, impressed me. Pom Pom's stubby little fingers were wrapped around the thumb of an adult Smurf embracing him. He was one I'd helped escape from the municipal shelter, and whose activist code name was Paperclip. Both Smurflings started squeaking in a distinctive pattern when they saw me, a plaintive look in their big round eyes. As he listened, Blueberry's face slowly shifted from joy to comprehension, and then to dismay. He began blubbering. "What are they saying?" I inquired concernedly, as I gazed at my beloved little blue infant friends, more gently patting my crying Blueberry on his little head and letting him hug my finger. The Smurfette, tenderly holding Strawberry, answered, her eyes glittering dangerously with anger as she spoke. Saying, in baby Smurf talk, that he hurt me, he hurt me, he hurt me. Here's Blueberry. Blueberry listened to the plaintive squeaks of Pom Pom and Strawberry. Comprehending their simple baby Smurf talk that someone had hurt them, and sensing their pain, he began to cry in that tiny, squeaky pitch of the Smurflings in sympathy for his nursery mates. My emotionally sensitive little adopted baby Smurf wrapped his soft, spindly arms around my finger for comfort. This was how the tiny infants hugged we gentle humans who truly cared for them. Some of the hardliners were half in mind not to even return the Smurfnap babies to us, unimpressed with our failure to safeguard them from harm. I pleaded with them to allow us to bring Strawberry and Pom Pom back to our nursery. I stated truthfully that no better day-to-day care with high-maintenance little blue infants existed anywhere outside of a Smurf village, and that all the known Smurf villages were already strained to capacity trying to care for orphan baby Smurfs. I pointed out that their activist cell likely didn't possess the stable environment, nor the many resources, both material and human, that were required to truly keep the wee little blue infants healthy and happy. The Smurfhead's voice was filled with reproach as I hung my head in humility.
Nevertheless, see that you do, Smurf, better measures.
What?
Nevertheless, see that you do Smurf better measures to ensure these baby Smurfs' security, or we may have no choice in the future but to liberate them from your nursery's care. And I mean all of them.
It took no convincing on my part that she was deadly serious, and if they decided, they could swiftly and deftly confiscate all the tiny inhabitants of the Blue Moon Nursery, no matter how the nurses and I tried to thwart them. I just want to see how much longer is left. Oh, it's not a lot. Alright, cool. We'll finish this then. In a few days' time, Pom Pom and Strawberry's tails and noses were no longer too sore to be touched if done carefully. Despite the added expense, the Blue Moon Nursery hired an extra licensed caretaker just to stand by during the 12-hour night shift. Her sole duty was to cuddle, speak in a gentle, reassuring voice, and to stroke the wee ones' tails and noses whenever they awoke screaming from the frequent night terrors spawned by their recent ordeal until they settled down. It typically required nearly an hour of undivided attention from the caretaker to ease the emotionally vulnerable little baby creatures before tucking them back into their electric auto-rocking cradle. This procedure wasn't effective with Pom Pom's deflated tail, as the poor creature longed for it to be filled out again. Eventually, the nurse decided only to caress and squeeze Pom Pom's bulbous Smurf nose in lieu of his tail, because the self-conscious little tyke merely cried with grief every time he felt someone touch his pathetic, flaccid remains. The Smurf hardliners had informed me that because of the repeated near drowning they had been subjected to, the two Smurfling waifs had acquired a phobia of water, even if only an inch deep. From now on, the nurses would have to give them sponge baths. Whoa. Sorry, just my microphone thing came out for a sec. The Smurf hardliners had informed me that because of the repeated near drowning they had been subjected to, the two Smurfling waifs had acquired a phobia of water, even if only an inch deep. From now on, the nurses would have to give them sponge baths, wetting and rinsing the sponges at the sink, because even the sight of a full water bucket would fill the whiny, diminutive beings with trepidation. Their days of merry giggling and squeaking as they splashed about in little basins with floating bath toys and bubbles were over. I hoped not forever. Despite the relief I felt from the return of Pom Pom and Strawberry to their nursery home, there was one detail about the crime scene I'd learned of that would stick in my heart forever. The Smurf hardliners had not searched the basement extensively. Shortly after they had located our missing Smurflings, these activists carried them to an awaiting van where the Smurfette and the others fed, cleaned and clothed the two distressed blue infants as they drove. Later, when the police conducted a more thorough search of the basement, holy shit! Someone found the tiny, months-old bones of a baby Smurf skeleton in the interior of a grimy old pizza box in one of the workbench's bottom drawers. Holy shit. The baby Smurf had been bashful, runty male named Snickers, which had been reported missing from a pet store 6 months ago. Besides its picked-over bones, there was an adoption ad clipping with a picture of it smiling and hiding under his security blankie. That same tattered little blanket was found threaded irreverently through the skull bone's eye sockets, besides its mouldy Smurf hat. Oh, God. Skeleton of a Smurf. Here's a picture of Blueberry, gif of Blueberry, chillin', crying, chillin'. I lay Blueberry down on his special little mattress that was approved for baby Smurfs. Sucking his wee blue thumb and gazing pleadingly up at me, the needy creature wiggled the little nubbin of bare flesh that was his Smurf tail. This was a recognized signal by those well versed in the care of these tiny blue infants, signifying the little creature was fretful and dearly wanted you to gently squeeze and stroke the sensitive, spongy extremity. That night, after tucking Blueberry into bed, I had to tenderly squeeze and knead the snivelling creature's tail for nearly an hour before he stopped whining. I then patiently waited until I heard the peaceful rhythm of his tiny snores. Getting up, I quietly walked out into the backyard and gazed solemnly up into the starry night sky. Rivulets of salty tears began streaming down my cheeks as I wept for Snickers, a precious baby Smurf whose joyful little squeaks would never enchant this world again. Oh! Here we see the pet adoption thing for Snickers. He's like smiling and giggling, and then right next to him is a Jesus Christ, the image of him, his skeleton, with the blanket sewn like through his skull. Meet Snickers. This timid little baby Smurf loves his security blankie and is waiting for a patient, loving owner with a quiet and stress-free home. He likes to keep out of sight, hiding under his little blanket, crawling into shoes, socks, or paper bags. Keep all plastic bags out of reach. A curious baby Smurf may crawl inside one and panic if it becomes entangled, eventually suffocating. Snickers is shy around strangers and should be furnished with nooks to hide in each room. He's also very bashful about being naked in front of unfamiliar people, so never undress him or change his diaper while they are present. Come to our pet shop today and see Snickers during his nap time. This adorable little creature will steal your heart. I couldn't even begin to imagine what a hellish nightmare baby Snickers' last days on Earth had been. How this innocent, magical little being must have cried and cried for just a little mercy as it was brutalized, getting only cruel laughter in response. Today's episode of Blue Moon Nursery has been fucked. Raven Child. Oh, the poor little Smurflings. I'm glad Pom Pom and Strawberry are back to where it is safe. You did a great job on the Smurf and Smurfette that rescued them. But poor Snickers. Wonder if anyone will catch these cruel people torturing these little guys to death. That's a good point. The guy got away. Oh no, the guy got away. It's definitely going to be at least 10 more chapters of this happening. Squeaky Smurf.
I must confess, I wept as I finished reading this chapter, Smurf in hand. Fortunately, Pom Pom and Strawberry were saved about time. And what to say regarding little Snickers' fate? If captured, that sadistic pervert should take a big dose of his own medicine. Your technique is getting more sophisticated, and I love a pic with Blueberry blinking his tears back and wagging his soft and plump tail. Keep on always smurfing.
Kojinka Sketchette.
Poor little Snickers. Why?
That was just a robotic impression from SatAM or whatever. The torture of baby Smurfs is like killing kittens. It's disgusting and heartbreaking. I hope that cruel man gets... I hope that cruel man gets caught and raped in prison. I hope that cruel man gets caught and raped in prison for what he did. I mean, true.
Non-stop ass rape.
Cool Smurf. I feel so sorry for the poor baby Smurfs, especially Snickers. Whomever did this should be severely tortured himself. Smurf in hand. Much thanks to those who read this chapter and commented. Yeah, there's barely any comments, dude. This is like the next chapter, right? I was so hyped for the comments, and there's like just no one. What the hell? Much thanks to those who read this chapter and commented. It was an especially poignant chapter, and hard to read at some points. I know. Trying to evoke emotion for a character that doesn't exist and make people really care about his fate is one of my goals. Things will get lighter-hearted in the upcoming chapter. Blueberry will apply his heart-healing powers to Pom Pom and Strawberry as he did to Dewdrop. It won't be a complete mend, but things will improve a bit. Also, I have a surprise. A tiny baby Smurf, only a few hours old, just newly delivered by the stork. This is a concept a friend of mine actually came up with, and the details are his invention. And Squeaky, be assured that whenever I draw and write things like this, more than one tear hits the keyboard. Once again, thanks to all who read this. When things improve, it will be all the more rewarding for you. Wow, so that was part 5 of Blue Moon Nursery. Shit got real. Shit got so real this chapter. There's a guy doing like a dog web fucking Smurf torture ring, I guess. And he got away, so it's gonna happen again. Probably to this baby Smurf that's just been born. Probably gonna like immediately get kidnapped and tortured and shit. But this was good. This was like probably my favorite. Probably my favorite thing so far. This was sick. It was very exciting, very interesting, very heartbreaking, and yeah, I hope you enjoyed. We had some laughs, we had some tears of joy, some tears of sadness this episode, and I just hope Pom Pom and Strawberry, I hope their psyches can be healed. See you guys next time.